All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into something I think a lot of us are kind of curious about. You know, those big legal settlements, the ones that make headlines.
Oh, yeah, the ones that make you think, wow, I wish that were me.
Exactly. We're talking seven figures, eight figures, sometimes even more. And for this deep dive, we're turning to an employment lawyer named Branigan Robertson.
Okay, I know Branigan Robertson.
He's got a YouTube channel it's called Branigan Robertson, and he's got this video called How to Get a $1,000,000 plus settlement.
$1 million plus, huh? That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, and I'm really interested to see what he has to say because, when we think about these big settlements, we often picture these dramatic courtroom scenes.
You're right, like those movies where the jury comes back and says, you're awarded $10 million.
Yeah. But the reality is, reaching a settlement like that is a lot more complicated, and Robertson starts by making this really important distinction between settlements and verdicts.
Yeah, because a jury can award a huge amount of money, but that doesn't mean the plaintiff actually sees all of it, right?
Right, exactly. Settlements are different. They're agreements, like legally binding agreements between the parties involved.
So it's about compromise, basically.
Exactly. Both sides are giving up something to avoid the risk of a trial.
Makes sense. So it's not just about winning, it's about making a strategic decision.
Exactly. Now, to reach those million-dollar settlements, Robertson lays out 7 key factors.
7, okay. Let's hear them.
He talks about significant damages, provable liability, strong evidence, a high-quality lawyer, skilled negotiation, the defendant's ability to pay. Oh, and risk tolerance for both sides.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there, and I'm guessing these factors aren't limited to just employment cases, right?
You're right. They apply to all sorts of legal situations. So even if you're not dealing with a workplace issue, this deep dive could still be super relevant.
That's good to know.
Okay, so let's start with damages. How are these things actually calculated? Robertson uses this hypothetical case of wrongful termination. So imagine you're making a pretty good salary, let's say $240,000 a year. You've been with the company for, 20 years, and then, bam, you're fired illegally.
Unlawfully terminated, yeah.
So first up are the economic damages. These are your lost wages, both past and future.
So in this case, with that salary and 20 years of experience, we're already talking about a potential $560,000 in lost wages.
Yeah, just from the lost income alone.
That's a lot of money already, but it doesn't stop there, does it?
Nope. Robertson points out that emotional distress can also be a big factor in calculating damages.
Oh, right. Because losing your job like that can have a huge impact on your life, your mental health, your whole career trajectory.
Exactly. And in this hypothetical, he suggests that emotional distress damages could reach up to $800,000.
Wow, so we're already well over $1 million.
Yeah. But there's one more piece to the puzzle, and this is where it gets really interesting. Punitive damages.
Now, those are designed to punish the defendant for their wrongdoing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're harder to win because you have to prove that the defendant acted with malice or reckless disregard.
So it's not just about making a mistake, it's about intentionally doing something wrong.
Right. Now, in this scenario, Robertson suggests that if awarded, punitive damages could double the initial amount.
So that would bring the total to a staggering $2.72 million.
Yeah, so it's a lot of money. But it's not just about presenting a big number. You have to be able to prove liability.
Meaning you have to show that the defendant actually broke the law. It's not enough to just feel wronged, right?
Exactly. Robertson gives an example of a violation of the Family and Medical Leave Act.
Oh, the FMLA. That's where someone gets fired after taking legally protected leave.
Right, like if you take medical leave and then your employer retaliates against you. But it's not enough to just say that happened.
You got to prove it, right?
Exactly. And that's where the lawyers come in. They gather facts, documents, witness testimonies, and they build a case based on evidence.
It's like putting together a puzzle. Every piece has to fit.
And the stronger the evidence, the more leverage you have in negotiations.
And I bet some pieces of evidence are more powerful than others.
Oh, absolutely. Robertson mentions this hypothetical email where a boss calls an employee dead weight. Like, imagine that being presented in court.
Ooh, yeah. That's pretty damning.
It shows intent, right? But of course, most cases aren't that clear-cut. That's why having a skilled lawyer is so important.
Someone who can interpret the evidence and present it in a way that supports your claim.
Exactly. And, it's not just about the evidence. It's also about how you tell your story. Robertson calls this client veracity.
Client veracity, what's that?
It's basically how believable you are.
Oh, so it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Right. If your account is inconsistent or unclear, it can hurt your credibility. So a good lawyer will not only help you gather evidence, but also help you tell your story in a compelling way.
So it's like a partnership between the lawyer and the client.
Exactly. And that brings us to this really important point that Robertson makes about the lawyer factor.
Okay, the lawyer factor, tell me more about that.
Well, he says that choosing the right lawyer can make all the difference. And he breaks it down into several key attributes.
Okay, lay 'em on me. What makes a good lawyer in these situations?
He talks about reputation, effort, negotiation skills, storytelling ability, and even past success.
So it's not just about having a famous lawyer, it's about finding someone who's actually going to put in the work.
Exactly. And Robertson is really adamant about this. He says that even if you have the most famous lawyer in the world, if they don't put in the effort, it won't matter.
So you got to find someone who's both competent and dedicated.
Absolutely. He says long hours and thorough preparation are non-negotiable.
So it's not just about the lawyer, it's about the client too.
Yeah, it's a team effort. Both the lawyer and the client have to be invested in building a strong case. But it's not just about legal groundwork, right? There's also the whole negotiation aspect.
Right, because at some point, you're going to have to sit down with the other side and try to hammer out a deal.
And this is where things get really interesting. Robertson argues that very few lawyers truly understand how to leverage the law effectively in negotiations.
It's a skill, for sure. Knowing when to push, when to hold back, when to compromise.
Exactly. It takes patience, strategy, and the nerve to walk away from a good offer if you think you can get a better one.
Oh man, I don't know if I could do that. Like, if someone offered me a big chunk of money, I think I'd be tempted to just take it and run.
Yeah, it takes a lot of trust in your lawyer and a strong belief in your case.
And a willingness to take risks.
Absolutely. And speaking of risks, Robertson also talks about the importance of storytelling in legal proceedings.
Storytelling. In a
Sure.
legal case, how does that work?
Well, he says that a lawyer who can connect with the opposing side on a human level can be incredibly persuasive.
So it's not just about cold, hard facts. It's about appealing to emotions, too.
Right. A good story can make the difference between winning a case and losing it.
It makes sense when you think about it. We all respond to stories. It's how we make sense of the world.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the other side of the table.
Yeah.
The defense lawyer and their approach.
Okay, yeah. Because they're going to have their own strategy, right?
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that defense lawyers and plaintiffs' lawyers operate with different motivations.
How so?
Well, defense lawyers often bill by the hour, whereas plaintiffs' lawyers typically work on contingency.
Meaning they only get paid if they win the case.
Exactly. So a defense lawyer might be incentivized to drag things out, while a plaintiff's lawyer is focused on securing a favorable outcome as efficiently as possible.
That creates a really interesting dynamic, huh?
It does, and it definitely plays a role in the negotiation process. Now, here's where things get even more complicated. Robertson talks about attorney fee provisions, which apply in certain areas of law, like employment law.
Attorney fee provisions. Okay. What are those?
Basically, if the plaintiff wins, the defendant might have to pay their legal fees on top of the damages.
Oh, wow. So that could add up to a lot of money.
It can. And it gives the plaintiff's lawyer even more leverage in negotiations.
So if you have a strong case and you're in a situation where attorney fees apply, you're in a pretty good position.
You are. But even with all these factors in play, there's one crucial element that can make or break a $1 million settlement: the defendant's ability to pay.
Ah, so even if you have the best case in the world, if the defendant doesn't have the money, you're not going to see a big payout.
Right, it's all about being realistic. You have to assess the defendant's financial situation early on. Are there any insurance policies? What are the coverage limits?
So it's not just about the law, it's about understanding the financial realities too.
Exactly. And ultimately, both the plaintiff and the defendant have to weigh the potential gains against the risk of going to trial.
Because if you go to trial, there's no guarantee of winning, and you could end up with less than what you were offered in a settlement.
Or nothing at all.
Yeah.
So risk tolerance is a huge factor.
I bet that's a tough decision to make, turning down a big chunk of money in the hopes of getting even more later.
It is. And Robertson really emphasizes the psychological pressure involved in that decision.
It's like that classic game show dilemma. Do you take the sure thing, or do you risk it all for a chance at something bigger?
Exactly. And it's a decision that requires a shared understanding of risk between the client and their lawyer. Both parties need to be on the same page and fully aware of the potential consequences of each choice.
Sounds like there's a lot more to these settlements than meets the eye.
There is. It's a complex process, with lots of moving parts and human emotions and strategic calculations.
Robertson's video is really shedding some light on this whole world. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think what's so valuable is that he's not just talking about the legal aspects, he's also addressing the human element.
The emotions, the uncertainties, the tough choices.
Exactly. Because ultimately, these cases are about real people navigating a complex system.
And that's something we often forget. We see the headlines, but we don't always think about the human stories behind them.
And that's why I think this deep dive is so important. It's giving us a glimpse into a world that's often shrouded in mystery and helping us understand the human drama that unfolds within it. It really does sound like reaching one of those big settlements. It's not just about the law, it's about everything else that goes along with it. The strategy, the finances, even just like having the mental toughness to see it through.
Totally. And Robertson makes that really clear. These things aren't quick and easy. It's a long game. Years of work, planning every detail. And even then, you got to have some luck on your side. Not every case is going to hit $1 million, no matter how good you are.
But knowing what goes into it, that's got to be helpful for anyone, right?
Yeah.
Even if they never end up in that situation themselves.
For sure. Like you always say, knowledge is power. The more you know about how things work, the better off you are. And this deep dive, man, it's given us plenty to think about.
I was just thinking, it's so interesting to get this behind-the-scenes look, because we usually only see the big, flashy stuff, not all the work and the human side of things.
Oh, absolutely. Like behind every case, there's someone dealing with all this pressure, all this stress, and they're making decisions that could change their whole life.
Robertson talks about that with the risk tolerance thing. Just got to have a certain personality to turn down guaranteed money, maybe 6 figures even, just hoping for more down the line.
Oh, yeah. Some people just aren't wired that way. He had this great analogy. It's like playing poker. Knowing when to hold them, when to fold them, that's huge. And it's not just about the numbers. It's about how comfortable you are with taking that gamble, what you really value at the end of the day.
So it's not even just about winning. It's about getting what's right for you.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Exactly. And to do that, you got to have open communication with your lawyer, real trust there. They're working together the whole way, like partners.
Robertson did such a good job, I think, explaining all this stuff that most people never even consider. It's not just the law. It's about understanding people, the risks, all of it, to get to a fair outcome.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Whether you're facing a workplace issue or just curious about this legal stuff, this deep dive hopefully makes things a little clearer, shows you the steps to those $1 million settlements.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to throw a question out to our listeners.
Hit me with it.
Think about everything we've talked about today. Now imagine you're in that situation, someone offers you a 6-figure settlement. Do you take it? Or do you try for more, even knowing you might end up with nothing?
Man, that's a tough one. Really makes you examine what you're willing to risk, how much you trust the system, what you believe in, all that.
It really makes you think, all the stuff happening behind the scenes that we never even see.
It's a whole other world back there. And Robertson, he does a great job peeling back those layers, showing us how it all works.
And I like that he doesn't shy away from the human side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the emotions, all that uncertainty, the tough calls people got to make. It's real life, not just legal strategy.
Exactly. At the end of the day, these cases, they're about people going through some serious stuff.
And that's what I think makes this deep dive so powerful, honestly. We see the headlines, the big dollar signs, but there's so much more to it. Robertson helps us see that.
Yeah, it's been eye-opening for me, that's for sure. Learning about how these million-dollar settlements happen, all the factors that come into play.
But even more than that, getting a better understanding of the human stories driving it all, that's what sticks with me.
It's what makes this whole topic so fascinating, right? It's not just about money, it's about people fighting for what's right, dealing with this whole complex legal system and all the drama that comes with it.
So as we're wrapping up here, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Okay, what's up?
Robertson gives us this framework, right, for understanding how these big settlements happen. But we got to remember, every single case is different.
There's no magic formula that works every time.
Nope. What wins one case might not work in another. The law is always changing, and every situation throws curveballs your way.
So as helpful as all this info is, if you ever find yourself in this situation, best thing to do is get advice from a real expert right now.
100%. A lawyer can look at your specific case, walk you through the whole process, make sure you're making smart choices for your situation.
And never forget, knowing your stuff, that's powerful. The more you understand about how the legal world works, the better you can handle it, fight for what's yours.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of million-dollar settlements. Hope you all learned something new, something that makes you feel empowered.
And hey, who knows? Maybe one of you listening will be celebrating a big win someday. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.